I've never lost the pain of what happened from World War II, I, or what have you. But just the fact that all these people could have been doing something else worthwhile laid in a casket.
It was such a rough time for my family. I don't know how they got through it. They are very private people. In fact, with all this hoopla since the story, I'm sure my grandmother is like spinning in her grave. So to have 500 people show up at the train station when the bodies came back must have been very difficult for her.
Well, around the square, I think we went to Kingston, through Edwardsville, Larksville, stopped off with my mother's. Well, the family lived there then. Come on in, boys.
Well, people were all over the streets, you know, when people heard and seen the procession coming through. Yeah, it was a heartache.
Well, they come through all the small towns. They stopped at actually the school, and then when we first lived on Broadway, we lived at 29 West Broadway, and so we stopped at that house. And at that time, I think the hearses got in a row of three alongside of each other and went up the street that way. But the saddest part of it was when they did stop in front of the house, and my mother said to the boys, "You're home now, go on in." And it's just something I can't forget.
Three boys gone forever. So the question, how could the family go on?
Well, you had to keep going, you know. But, you know, the mother and the father is the worst. They, you know, they keep thinking. She just wanted her boys back.
Over the next several years, John and Mary Baluh spent most of their time keeping busy. Mary baked, while John took long walks, watched baseball games, and sat on the porch.
They cried a lot. I guess it broke them up pretty bad because Dad had to quit working. He was in such bad shape.
I just saw sadness and heartache, and especially when it happened over and over. I think one time she was able to probably get over it a little bit, but then it happened again and again, and it just was heartbreaking. And I know she was broken heart, along with my father too, because he never really recovered from all the pain. He kept it to himself, though. He wasn't one to speak up.
Eddie was drafted during the Korean War, but his father did everything in his power to make sure he wouldn't lose another son.
My grandfather talked to, I think, every politician who would listen to him. Every official went to the draft board and got a lot of people working for him, and my father got a deferment. When my story came out, I think it was somebody in Pittsburgh called me and said, "I lived in Larksville that time. I remember the hoopla when your father got his deferment." He said the town was split. There were people who said, "If my son has to go, then he should have to go." He said, but the rest of the town said, "Oh, come on, don't you think that family gave enough?"
Joni said through her search, her cousins and siblings got to know their uncles.
So while we were kids, they were just headstones in the cemetery. And taking my grandmother every major holiday and like a Sunday a month or something, and cleaning up the graves and putting out new flowers. And that's all they were. They didn't have personalities to us growing up.
That, you know, that's one thing that I do regret, is not being able to see them grow up or meet them as I grew older, to know them better in that fashion. I sort of feel like I missed out on not getting to know them enough.
Though Joni never knew her uncles personally, she sees Jay, Tom, and Danny every day, in herself and in her family.
Tom loved pickles and ate them in quantity, and I've been a pickle person all my life. Danny, I see Danny in my father's eyes. And when I see the pictures of Jay, facially, I think he looks like a cross between my Uncle Fran and my Uncle Joe, with my Uncle Fran's physique, because he's also very tall and very thin. And I do feel as though I've got to know them now. They're not just a picture and a headstone.